The people who think that Benedict XVI was a valid pope or good are deceived. He was one of the most wicked heretics in history. He was an apostate antipope and a major deceiver. See our video, The Heresies of Benedict XVI, and our file on his heresies. Benedict XVI, along with the apostate antipope Francis, caused people to venerate the Antichrist. Even Benedict XVI's decision to give wider access to the Latin Mass was a deceptive move because the devil knew that by that time most of the, quote, priests offering it were invalidly ordained, having been ordained in the invalid new rite of Paul VI. It was a calculated attempt to keep people believing that there is hope in the whore of Babylon when there isn't. The devil wanted to keep people under the antipopes for as long as possible so that they'd eventually have to accept the, quote, canonization of the Antichrist, John Paul II, as well as Paul VI, John the 23rd, etc. Some people who have figured out that Francis is not Catholic and cannot be the Pope think that Benedict XVI is the true Pope. They are wrong. Benedict XVI was not a valid Pope, he was an apostate antipope. It's also not just a coincidence in our view that Benedict XVI's name in Greek, Benedictos, equals exactly 666. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the name Benedict, of course. It's just an identifier. He was the seventh king under whom this process to venerate the Antichrist and pagan Rome got started. Further, in our view, the mark of the beast on the hand or forehead is a spiritual mark. It represents the false ecclesiastical and priestly authority of the Vatican II sect, which holds spiritual authority over people in end times Europe and around the world. The Vatican II sect doesn't have valid authority from God, but it has influence over the peoples, nations, and languages that follow the counter-church. That's why the whore of Babylon is said to sit upon many waters, which the Apocalypse tells us are peoples, nations, and languages. The counter-church has sway over the people who wrongly think that its anti-popes are true popes. That's why the false traditionalists who obstinately recognize the Vatican II antipopes in the face of the evidence are wicked false teachers and instruments of Satan. They keep people in heresy and in false positions. Those who tell you to remain in the Vatican II sect are deceivers. You are not staying with the Catholic Church, you are staying with the whore of Babylon. It is not the Catholic Church. Hence Apocalypse 18:4 says of end times Babylon, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins." Scripture's admonition to come out of end times Babylon also indicates that antipopes reign there during this period, for Scripture would not tell people to remove themselves from communion with the true pope. With regard to Francis, who is a totally apostate antipope, he is indeed speaking for pagan Rome at this time. He represents the counter-church unmasked. Indeed, many people who are blind to the evil of the deceivers, John Paul II and Benedict XVI, are appalled by Francis.
Of hedonism and sexual aberration called liberation. That gospel, that anti-gospel, is promoted all throughout the world. And it is becoming increasingly, as John Paul II and his successor predicted it would be, a tyranny. The media doesn't help at all because the media is on the other side and uses the Pope's words to bash Catholic activists in America and all over the West.
Well, their recognition that Francis has problems doesn't indicate that they've come to the full truth. It is rather a fulfillment of the prophecy about how followers of the counter-church shall wonder and be shocked by the activity of the beast, especially after the seventh king.
We have sometimes been shocked by things that we have heard.
If those people really want to wake up and embrace the full truth and be saved, they need to recognize and reject the entire Vatican II sect and its wicked antipopes. The reason that God allowed this to happen is the bad will of people. God saw that people didn't appreciate the true faith, the true sacraments, the true Mass, etc., so he allowed it almost all to be taken away. The true Catholic Church still exists, and it is visible, despite the counter-church in Rome. You are listening to a visible member of the true Church in our day. But God has allowed the true Church to be reduced almost as far as it can be in the great apostasy because people don't deserve more than that. As Jesus said, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth, Luke 18:8. People in our day, generally speaking, don't deserve to have a true pope in Rome who is recognized by the whole world. They don't deserve to have a flourishing Catholic presence in every diocese. They don't deserve it. They deserve desolation, and thus God allowed almost everything to be taken away except for a faithful remnant, so that only those who really strive after him, who live for God and not for the opinions of men and the crowds, will find the faith and embrace it. In Isaiah 121 we read about Jerusalem, the holy city in the Old Testament period. Quote, "How has the faithful city that was full of judgment become a harlot? Justice dwelt in it, but now murderers." God allowed his holy city to become a harlot. That applied to the city of Jerusalem in the Old Testament. It applies to the city of Rome, not the Catholic Church, in the final days. Many people look at the current situation of Rome and lose faith in God and the Catholic Church as a result. That is foolish. Some people have decided to become Protestants, Eastern Schismatics, or even atheists. They are falling prey to the devil's trap. As we've shown, this situation was prophesied. The Catholic Church always has been and remains the one true Church of Jesus Christ. To be saved, you need to be a true traditional Catholic who rejects the Vatican II sect and practices the true faith. Our material explains how to do that.